Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game, the podcast where I, your host, Connor McCabe, bring on a guest to hear from them about a meaningful or memorable video game from a particular moment in their life. On the show, we talk as much about what made playing that game memorable and what sticks out to our guest all the way, in this future time today, as we will get into the place that it held in their life and the context of when they had this moment with it. A little bit of housekeeping up top is that anything that my guest or I plug today, you can find a link in the show notes. So whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts or watching on YouTube, if you want to follow something and learn more about us or follow some links, there is stuff in the show notes. If you scroll down, I've got them just nice and perfectly organized for you. Speaking of which, you should check out the show all over social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. If you don't already follow us on YouTube, give the channel a follow. And so if you want to see how just handsome the two of us are going to be on this podcast today, it's some good stuff. And then lastly, if you want to look into supporting us more and to get some bonus content for doing that, you should check us out on Patreon. We're over at patreon.com/super NPC Radio, where we have bonus video game podcasts that come out every week depending on the tier that you subscribe at. We got a number of options there for you. So if you're interested in supporting us for as low as $1 a month, check us out there. Find something that works for you. I think you're going to like it. I just, a couple weeks ago, released the most recent co-op episode. It's a monthly version of this podcast that I do with a group of people where we discussed Half-Life 2. You can find that on our Patreon for the Engineer Toads, or it's also on YouTube. But the audio version, that's gonna cost you. But that's one of the many things you can find in the show notes. That'll do it for the housekeeping, and I'll finally introduce our guest for today's episode. Please welcome actor, writer, and improviser, Marcus Folmar.
Hey, what's going on, Connor? Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you on the podcast. Hearing you sort of do your first, just respond to my welcoming you on the show really made me want to see you as like a newscaster or something. That energy was fantastic and you were so ready for the moment.
Yes, I always feel like maybe someone is watching. In this case, it is actually true.
Yes.
Or it might be true. So, I'm giving you my sparkly voice and presentation. So there it is.
I feel so honored. I love that too. And it's no surprise. You are a veteran performer of all sorts. So no wonder you were just ready for the moment. You're camera ready, as they say.
Yeah, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. A wise person once said.
That is the first little nugget of wisdom that we are getting today. And Marcus, I have told the listeners that you're going to have just countless, so I expect you to continue to share wisdom with us.
Okay. Wisdom count 1 and scrolling. So
great.
See what we reach up to.
We'll add to that total. Marcus, I'm so glad to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for joining me. I know you how I know the majority of guests who join me on this podcast, which is through the Los Angeles improv community, namely the UCB Theater. We are, for a year now, and we can officially say it, on the last podcast I recorded with my guest, we were like, well, who knows what our future holds. But now we can say you and I have been on a UCB Herald team, XOXO, for a whole year. It sure went by fast.
It did. It went by fast, and I'm happy that we're moving into the second year.
Yes.
That's very exciting. And I've loved performing with you and our whole team, and, it only goes up from here. So
absolutely. It's been such a blast, and I haven't heard you express this as much, although I'd be willing to guess that, it might ring true for you as well. Allie and Ryan have been very expressive about just, for the first time ever, they've been on a team that's got a continued run.
Yes.
That's the case that you're in as well, right?
That's absolutely the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is, is it 5? Is this team 5 or is it 6? I can't remember
for you?
Right now. I think this is team 5. But to be continued is great because I feel like in each case in the past, like just as we're starting to hit our stride and, for whatever reason, we're sort of broken apart and rearranged or whatever. So I'm looking forward to seeing XOXO gel, because we've gelled already.
Yes.
Like, I mean, we're not wiggly with our gel. We're not Jello. We're like, what's that stuff that sets? It starts jelly, but it sets and it's got form and it can hold some stuff up.
Absolutely. It's a foundation. It's a base at this point.
Yeah. My construction workers out there, tell me what I'm talking about, because there's a substance and it starts that way, but it crystallizes.
Yes. Well, thankfully for us, Marcus, we've got a huge fraction of the listeners who are construction workers.
Yes.
They're stopping on the job site as we speak, and they're yelling out what this substance is.
And they're shaking their heads like, how does he not know this? But my bad.
Hey, you know what? You put yourself out there, and that's all we can ask. It's exciting stuff. I'm really glad to get the chance to continue a second year with this group. And with you, because before this, you and I have been familiar for years, but never, I don't even know if we had performed together before we were placed on this team.
No, I don't think we had. It was just more like ships passing in the night. And I think maybe former teams had performed on shows that you produced.
Yes. Back at Tuesday Night Thunder, at least Hot Goss, and I'm sure others.
Yes. You remember. I
forget.
I love that Hot Goss, one of my favorite teams from back in the day. We had a long run and we're still very tight. So yes, that was the name.
Just absolute sweeties on that team. And many former guests. I mean, we've got Cassie, Brian, Corey, and Jeremy, who have all guested on the show before. There was Marie, there was Hannah, there was you. Who am I forgetting?
I think you said everybody, didn't you?
Okay, cool.
I'm 8.
Maybe you. There we go.
I'm the last person. What took you so long to bring me on this show? Actually, I know the answer to that already.
Oh, yes.
Because I was scared of the podcast a little bit, but I am embracing it now. Yes.
I love it. But yeah, I think that's like kind of how we became familiar. Had you been on I want to say you were on a mess hall team before Hot Goss, or is that not true?
That is true. Hot Goss was my second one.
Okay.
And the first one was called Dollop. I don't know if you
because
remember.
That was, was that the team Allie was on as well?
You're very sharp with your recollections and your UCB team history. I'm
an encyclopedia of useless knowledge, Marcus.
Yes.
No wisdom, but plenty of useless facts. Well, I thought you were, because that was spring 2017. I know this because that was when I got placed on Mess Hall as well on Busters. So that's why I remembered thinking you were on, is because we would perform at the same Mess Hall shows.
Okay. That's where this all began. Yes. Dollop with Allie, and we're reunited now in the XOXO. But yeah, that's where it all started.
Dang. That's how I know you. I've gotten to get to know you better over the years, especially over this last year. You are just like such a great presence, not only on the team, but just in general. You're so funny. You're so composed on stage. You really have like a sense of not just professionalism, but like confidence on stage. But all that aside, what else do you want to share with the listener about yourself? Who are you?
I mean, thank you for those compliments. And I think that just that's a result probably of doing it for a very long time. I was a child actor. I had my first, and we used to do a lot of improv too. That was kind of a huge part of our performance. We do our sketch, and then there'd be a section of the show that was improv. So starting for me in the 7th grade.
Wow.
7th grade group I was involved with in Denver, Colorado, where I grew up mostly, called Kid Skits. And so, I made the decision very early that that was going to be my career, and I've been doing it since then. So all that time on stage with kid skits from 7th grade through graduating from high school.
Wow.
All those years I was doing that. Got my SAG card with my first national TV show when I was in the 9th grade.
Oh my goodness, no way. Well, can you tell me about this? Where did you fly out somewhere?
Well, they came to Denver. Hollywood came to Denver. There was a show. Okay, historians.
If you want to, I'm interested.
There was a show called Father Dowling Mysteries, which starred Tom Bosley, who is best known as the father from Happy Days.
Wow.
But he had a show called Father Dowling Mysteries, which was based on a series of mystery books, novels, where there was this priest by day who also would sort of become a detective and solve crimes. This is a real show.
I love it.
Solve crimes, for his parishioners and different people from the community by night. And, Father Dowling was like a detective. And his nun, Sister Stephanie, was kind of like his sidekick.
That is, we need a reboot of this because I want to see this.
Right. And so for whatever reason, Mr. Bosley's health, I don't know, for some reason it was better for him to be in Colorado than actually in Chicago, where the show was supposed to be set. Oh. And Viacom had like a little branch office in Denver. They used to produce a bunch of Perry Mason movies there.
Interesting.
And they brought Father Dowling to Denver. And I booked it and got a guest star on there and never looked back.
That is amazing. Like, when was the last time you told this story? Because that is like the series of events for that to work out. And then here you are all these years later is just amazing to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I've mentioned it just in conversation, but I don't think I've had a chance to I guess I'm saving this for Jimmy. Yes. One of the Jimmys when I ascend to the Kimmel show or either Jimmy.
My prediction's Kimmel.
All right. But you got it first. I told it here first.
Huge. Oh, we got an exclusive here, folks, on the Call Me By Your Game podcast. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's so fun. I want to dig in even more, but I'll save that for one of our social times, just on even more of the details on how you got started. That's also kind of a fun coincidence that the show either shot or was supposed to shoot in Chicago, where you would eventually end up, and then went to Colorado. Just, I don't know, just a funny thing to think about.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Which came first? Yeah, Chicago was... I love Chicago. That was kind of like, sort of like a creative home for me, even though I grew up in Denver. In Chicago's where I went to college at Northwestern University, and, where I first plugged into like I said, we did some junior improv growing up, but like Chicago's Second City, that was kind of where that excitement got reignited during my years there.
That's fantastic. I love hearing that. And then, do you remember, what brought you to Los Angeles? Was it just, hey, it's kind of time to move, or?
It was that. I mean, it was a sort of going back to that 9th grade Father Dowling appearance. I was, very focused and planned out as to what the next steps of my life were going to be. So moving to Colorado after moving to Los Angeles after Northwestern was already on the list. So it was just time to kind of make that move and, move into stardom.
I love that. At some point, I'm saying this out loud so that I remember later. I want to just go on a YouTube rabbit hole to try to find your episode, or at least a clip from it, because I'm so interested. But I'm glad that you got out here to LA. We've gotten a nice sort of like little dive into your history and your path here. Is there anything that you've been up to lately outside of Herald Night that you'd like to plug or promote while we're here?
The only thing that I'll plug, because I'm so excited about it, I don't have this is just like maybe by just follow me and you'll see how this develops. But I've written a play. I told you I've written a play that I am going to present to the world at some point this summer. At the moment, we're searching for venues. So, I will know within the next week or so exactly when we'll be putting it up. But it's called Chicken Stories. And it is a look at the culture of today through the lens of chicken.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
when I say through the lens of chicken, like they're all of the vignettes within this play are thematically linked by chicken in some way, and it's so universal.
Yes.
I mean, I know we've got our vegans and folks but even there's vegan chicken. We cover that in the play.
Truly something for everybody.
It's truly something for everyone. So we didn't leave you out, but I've had such fun writing it. And so it is like heavily comedic, but it's also, at times sort of indicting of the culture today, and just a whole bunch of fun.
That is so exciting. And when you say follow you, should people follow you on Instagram? Is that the best place?
That's where I'm popping the most.
Okay, great.
I'm popping on Instagram, so just at Marcus Folmar is the best place. I'm late on TikTok. I'm very late.
Oh, me too. I just started a TikTok only for this podcast, so hopefully there'll be a good highlight of us at some point. But you're not alone.
Yeah, I'm not alone. So Instagram is where to follow me, and I'll be posting all of my chicken story updates as they develop there.
Awesome. I love that. Well, Marcus, thanks for sharing a little bit more about yourself today and telling not just me, but the audience some cool things you've got going on. We are going to, of course, discuss your general history with video games today, but I'd love for you to introduce what you've brought on for the main event and call me by your game.
I brought for you today Pitfall, and the classic game Pitfall.
Truly an iconic game that I didn't know if we'd ever discuss it. And here we are, finally gonna just talk about this incredibly influential game. I'm really excited. But we'll save that for the main event. Marcus, do you remember like the earliest time that you started interacting with or seeing video games in your life?
For the most part, it started not long before I got hooked on the game we're going to talk about. But we got a Intellivison gaming system for Christmas. It was either Christmas of 82 or 83. I'm not sure which one, but it was brand new out. Atari system had been around for a while, and I had sort of seen it and maybe played it a time or two at a friend's house. But Intellivison, when we came to, I have an older brother, 3 years older, remember us coming downstairs and seeing that set there, because our parents would wrap up certain gifts, but other ones would just be laid out. So those were the things that we could sort of interact with and play with right away while they were still sleeping, and then we'd open everything else, so that was already out, already set up by my dad, and we just dived in playing.
That is so exciting. I not to immediately make it about me, but I think I've maybe talked about this on the show before. When I grew up, we also had certain gifts that were wrapped and unwrapped. The wrapped gifts were always things that, careful how I phrase this, people got each other, but the unwrapped stuff that was in the living room was from a man we might know as Jolly St. Nicholas.
St. Nicholas.
Yes. Yes. Was that kind of a similar thing for you, or was it not exactly the case?
It was similar. We always got gifts from Santa. Mm-hmm. It was always Santa with a wink.
Santa, but give credit where credit's due.
Right. Santa with a wink. But yes, it was exactly the thing. And you were often playing. And I actually looked. I think we had at some point probably most of the Intellivision games. So,
Whoa.
you know, different categories, sports games. You know, there was a blackjack and poker game that I guess was very popular. I think it was the one that came with the Intellivision set when you bought it. Everybody got blackjack and poker, which. Thinking back, I don't know if this was like appropriate because I would have been well, I don't know.
You don't want to date yourself.
Date myself.
Let's just say for a child.
I was young. I was a child, and so that is how I learned how to play poker.
Yeah,
you know, at a young age.
It is. It's almost like you'd think would be on par with like, ooh, you don't want to give kids, maybe the pack-in game shouldn't be like Grand Theft Auto or something like that.
Right,
it's like violence or gambling or Sex Simulator 1000. Like you're not going to put that in there. That's not a game. But that's clever. So I have a question for you about this, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what were you going to say? I'm sorry. I'll wait for my question.
Well, no, I was just going to say that was for me, and I know this is probably not true for most of your listeners, that was sort of the height of my video game experience for those years from, you know, whatever, that 82 or 83, and for the next 5 years where we were owners and collecting the games of Intellivision. After that, I never owned myself one of the modern gaming systems. I think the next thing out was Nintendo. I played that at friend's house during college. My roommate at some point had a Sega Genesis.
All right.
And it was kind of like that was the years of Mortal Kombat.
Yes.
Was out on, and so there was a period in college where, you know, every night we were battling.
Yes.
Because that was, you know, we had moved into an apartment. Not everybody had gaming systems. We weren't all on our phones. So that was everybody would assemble at our apartment, and it was not one of the few gaming systems on campus amongst our friend group. And so there
sort
were
of like
battles.
A communal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so fun and so interesting. Do you remember, was there a character that you liked to use the most?
I loved just Raiden. I mean, not to be all basic, but, you know, I had learned how to, the shortcuts of how to get the powers going. I loved Raiden, was my favorite. I loved, was it, who would say, get over here?
Scorpion.
Yes. With the yellow.
Yes.
And so that was kind of a brief kind of, if I was going to re-spark and be a gamer, that's when it should have happened.
Yes.
But it sort of didn't, because I was just I blame the theater.
I blame my drive and my interest in the arts.
Right.
Well, that's one thing. I think I probably talked to you about this before you came on the show. One thing I love about this podcast, I'll just say things I like about my own show, is that I can have all walks of gamer on. I just was talking to our previous guest, Sydney, about this, but I am obviously someone who loves video games very much and if you're watching the YouTube video, look behind me, you'll see, it's a pretty public thing about me, but I love having people on like yourself who maybe have had like a window of like gaming in your life, and it turns out it's actually a few windows. I would like to do a little rewinding and talk about the Intellivision briefly. This is sort of the way that we ended up starting the conversation to get you on this podcast. I remember standing with you after some show we had at some point this last year, and my producer and editor of this podcast, Jeremy Schmidt, we were talking at Birds, and it came up that I think he was asking you about video games, and you brought up the Intellivision, and you were very enthusiastic, saying like, oh, I'd love to talk about that sometime. So that immediately grabbed my interest. because we haven't talked about it on this pod yet. Do you remember as a kid at all anticipating that console? Was it something you had heard about before you got it, or was it a surprise?
I remember wanting it. It's very influenced by the commercials and everything that you see. And so the graphics were supposed to just crush Atari. And, at the time, I remember when it came out, people agreeing, like, yes, this was crushing the Atari. So lifelike. Yeah. It's like, for the time, it was. And so I remember that. And it was just kind of one of those, cool factor things is like, this was going to catapult me right into, the next level of just cooldom.
Yes, like the
social, yes, currency for sure.
That's amazing.
So yeah, I knew it was coming, and we wanted it, and I think my older brother was leading the push.
Cool.
But yeah, I wanted.
But he had secured your support for this.
My support, yes, I was on board.
Yes, I'm imagining him as a politician, just canvassing to your parents about getting this Intellivision.
Gotta get it.
I love that. So we also got some great window into your life playing the Sega Genesis as a community. Do you remember, outside of Mortal Kombat, did you ever play anything else on the Genesis?
I don't think I did.
Sure.
I mean, I think I'm trying to remember what else we had. I mean, maybe my roommate had some other games, but sure. I don't think any of them lent themselves to the type of, quick sort of battle, pickup game style, back and forth fights that we were doing.
That makes sense.
I don't remember any other game. That's all I remember. We played it a lot.
Were you ever the type of kid to go to an arcade?
For birthday parties or events like that. And I do it as long as my quarters lasted. This is back when we were dropping actual quarters.
Yes.
And this is what happened.
Oh.
My bike was stolen.
Oh no.
A brand new 10-speed was stolen outside of the convenience store near my house where they had a few video games inside. My brother and I went there after a softball practice and I don't think we were supposed to come straight home.
Yes.
We didn't have our locks. We had come from softball practice. We didn't have our chain locks. We went in, and this doggone centipede game was broken and kept giving us free games.
Oh no. This feels like a fable or like a life lesson.
Right. So it kept giving us free games, and we were in there playing game after game and just advancing along. And every so often we were running back and forth to check on the bikes.
Yes.
And one of the times I checked on the bike and my bike was gone. His older 10-speed was still sitting there.
No.
And I went back to my brother. I was like, my bike is gone. And he's like, no way. He didn't believe it. So he came out and checked. And of course, we checked behind the building as if maybe the person just,
hasn't left the scene of the crime yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they just moved it to kind of scare us a little bit. But
yes.
It was gone. It was gone.
What a tragedy. And just a lesson to anyone out there. If it's not a no good deed goes unpunished situation. It's of too much of a good thing can be a bad thing almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of internally scarred me a little bit against the arcade scene. It was like, you could get your valuables taken.
Yeah, that is a bit traumatizing. I mean, for a kid to lose something as like meaningful as your bicycle, that would break my little heart.
Yeah. So that happened, and I blamed arcade games.
You know what? We're really doing some good therapy here today. This is perfect. Well, so I only have a couple more questions with you, since I know, the years you've highlighted already were the majority of your game playing experience. Do you remember the last time you played a video game at all? Perhaps at a friend's house?
Well, the last time I played, my brother and my nephew play all the time.
Oh, really?
You should have him.
Yeah.
Either one of them. I'm going to nominate them for this podcast. Because, as a grown attorney, that's,
amazing.
Still finds time to do that. And is very passionate. For him, it's all the sports, Madden, and,
probably like NBA, 2K.
Yes, yes. So I watched a lot, and I'm I find myself watching the NBA playoffs are on.
Yes.
And so I will say how surprisingly engaging it can be just to be a spectator.
Yes. You're making a great case for Twitch right now.
Right. I kind of get it. But no, that I've been a watcher. I can't remember the last time I myself have, I can remember when I've been to the arcade.
Yes.
And played some stuff. And when I go to the arcade, it's always, I love the racing games.
Oh, fun.
But in terms of a home video system, I can't remember.
Sure. Well, it looks like I've got a new goal for this year. Sometime before or after practice, I got to get you on some Mario Kart or something.
Okay.
It's a personal thing for me.
Yes.
Well, is there anything else that we maybe haven't covered in your history with games, or a highlight that you've forgotten to mention up to this point?
I don't think so. I think I did notice a pattern. I was thinking about all the different Intellivison games we had, because we had most of them, I think. I did notice that the games that I gravitated towards were more kind of like fantasy games.
Oh, interesting.
And I was like, that's kind of interesting to kind of look back and realize that, maybe my actor artist self, because I didn't love the sports games, but there was a army type of thing where you had to and I remember feeling like I was like a soldier, and commanding my platoon and getting sort of sucked up into the story or the fantasy of playing that. And even the game we have for today, this adventure idea, I think is part of what drew me in. And so
interesting. Did you ever play text adventures or games where you would sort of make choices and click through certain scenarios at all?
We used to call that Mad Libs.
Mad Libs.
It was a magazine or a choose your own adventure.
Yes.
No, but not as a computer game. I don't remember.
Yeah. That was sort of the lineage to these choose your own adventure computer games, came from these sort of Mad Lib type of books. And then also it's in some ways, I'm not a Dungeons and Dragons player, although I'm interested. That had some lineage as well that's tied to games. That's awesome. Well, Marcus, thank you so much for sharing about your history with video games with me. That was so fun to just get some peeks into certain windows of your life. And I'll also say, I just hope someday you get a bike that just warms your heart and makes up for the loss of the 10-speed.
Yes. I did in college.
Oh.
I did in college. But that one was stolen too. But that's another story.
I'm so sorry to hear
and
that.
then
That
I
is
just
so
stopped.
funny.
I stopped after that.
At least the thief knows game, Marcus. At least
Yes.
there's that.
Right.
Well, this has been so much fun. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and then we'll come back to discuss all things Pitfall. So I'll see you on the other side.
pick up that shortwave radio?
I sure don't want to, but I will.
I'm Atlas, and I aim to keep you alive by telling you about Super NPC Radio's upcoming Bioshock Games Club series, only at patreon.com/supernpcradio. Would you kindly do that?
I didn't want to listen to an entertaining and funny Games Club series about the original Bioshock before, but now I simply must.
Would you kindly listen to the Games Club? It's available at the $5 DJ Toad tier with new episodes every Friday.
Weird. The more this guy asks us to do stuff, the more I want to do it.
Same. I might have to subscribe at the $5 DJ Toad tier at patreon.com/supernpcradio after all. Look, it's our friend Otacon.
Sure, Mr. Atlas. I'll piss myself, but only because you asked me specifically to do so.
I didn't ask you to piss yourself.
Welcome back to Call Me by Your Game. This is episode 204. I never really say the episodes numbers on the podcast because sometimes I don't release them in the order I record, but this will be episode 204. Of course, I'm here with Marcus Folmar. Marcus, welcome back.
Hey, good to be back.
You know, here we are, ready to discuss, finally get into the game that you brought on for the main event, which is Pitfall. Marcus, like I told you before the show, I'm going to do a little table setting and some history and context for the listener on this game. If you want to jump in at any time, you got the green light.
Okay, thank you.
You betcha. Without further ado, here we go. Pitfall, which the title, I'll say, has an exclamation point in it. I wanted to point that out because that just tickled me for some reason. It's exciting. Is a video game developed by David Crane for the Atari 2600 originally and released in 1982 by Activision. The player controls. Do you happen to know? This isn't a test. I'm generally curious if you remember. Do you remember the main character's name?
Oh, Jack, was it? No,
Jack's like kind of close. It's like that type of name. It's the main character's name is Pitfall Harry.
Pitfall Harry. Okay.
Pitfall Harry. Who has a time limit of 20 minutes to seek treasure in a jungle. The game world is populated by enemies and hazards that variously cause the player to lose lives or points. This is, for the listener out there, this is one of the originators of the 2D sort of platformer adventure genre. So like this predates Super Mario Brothers. So kind of like that game, you're moving left or right, jumping over stuff, avoiding enemies, swinging on vines in this game. But also it's an adventure to where the game lasts multiple screens. So you're not just on one screen like an arcade game, avoiding enemies. You are going on an adventure trying to find the treasure that we talked about. Pitfall received mostly positive reviews at the time of its release, praising both its gameplay and graphics, and the game was influential in the platform genre, and various publications have considered it one of the greatest games of all time. It is also one of the best-selling Atari 2600 games ever. It was ported to several contemporary video game systems, including the Intellivison, which we talked about, which is why we're here. And it has been included in various Activision compilation games and as a secret extra in later Activision published titles. So it would be like if in a certain Activision game you find a secret, you could then play Pitfall in the game itself. Which occasionally publishers will do that with their old games that they still have the license to. Marcus, before we move on to hear about your time with this game, is there any contextual stuff we need to know about Pitfall that I've perhaps omitted?
Well, first of all, I want to say, of everything you just read, there's one thing that just shocked me.
Yes.
A 20-minute time limit. Like, I don't think I remembered that. And I'll tell you why. Because I don't think in the history of my play I ever made it a full 20 minutes.
Oh, that's
without all three of my lives ending.
Yes.
And so for me, contextually speaking, I think what's important to know is that leaping onto those vines and releasing and getting the timing right at that time was a huge technological leap forward.
Yes, yes.
And so I actually did look at a little bit of a YouTube clip just to see the game and remember. And it seems now so simplistic. But if you want context, just know that was some new stuff. And it took the timing. You had to hit the button and leap, and then you had to release at the same time. So that's the context. It was new. Mm-hmm. And it was like doing stuff that we hadn't done before in video gaming. And so I'm mad at myself that I couldn't stay playing 20 minutes. But
it must be hard if that's the case. It must be really difficult.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
At the time.
Well, games that newer games or more modern games are a lot easier can be a lot easier for many reasons. One of which is that many games of the past were made to be difficult so that you felt like you had to have replay value, but also it gave you a sense of value that gave you a sense that your game had value because you would have to replay it so many times to try and beat it. This game wasn't at least did not start as an arcade game. I don't know if they made an arcade version, but many arcade games were known to be like quarter eaters, so that they would be difficult, so that you had to use another quarter to play the game. Console games, even if they weren't stemming from the arcade system in that way, still had a bit of that DNA in them, which is why even the original Super Mario Brothers, looking at that game, it feels pretty difficult compared to modern ones. And I remember as a kid replaying those first few levels over and over because I couldn't even do that. So yeah, I think there's probably something similar in how challenging this was, but also innovative, to your point.
Yeah. And this one was special. I do know that it did not start as an arcade game because a lot of the, like the Donkey Kongs and the Pac-Mans, which we had on gaming systems, started as the arcade. Yes. But this one got popular on these systems. And I do think at some point I remember seeing it, like they developed a arcade version.
That makes sense.
It originated as on the gaming system.
That makes sense. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you for the additional context. Well, let's get into your history with it. Was this game one of the ones that you received on Christmas Day, that fateful Intellivison morning, or was it something that you got later?
I think that came later. Once we had the Intellivison, getting a new game was our parents' way that they would incentivize us, basically.
Good grades.
Right. You could get a game. Birthday, of course, you might get a couple games, but
huge.
And we would always know what was coming out. So it was not one of the first. But I think I remember Pitfall maybe a year later, within a year.
Okay.
Pitfall came into my life.
Interesting. Now, you said that you knew about this game, knew it was coming. How did you know about that? Was it your brother who had his ear to the ground? Did you see it in a gaming magazine?
The particular Pitfall?
Yeah.
When I first mentioned that, I was referring to just the Intellivison.
Oh, gotcha.
The Intellivison was a brand new system at that time. The Pitfall itself, I think, it's kind of like the old school video game store going, where you would go and just walk the aisles and, choose your movie. It was the same thing. When we earned that incentive and would get to go, I do know that Pitfall was one that I picked.
Oh.
Because, I would get a game, my brother would get a game, and he would always go for, like I was saying, the sports game.
Yes.
I always gravitated towards some sort of adventure or something.
Yes.
And so I know I picked it out. And I remember, I think it was just looking at the box and seeing that and being able to imagine myself as an adventurer. I wanted to be, I guess, what did we say? Pitfall Harry.
Pitfall Harry, yes. Well, that's wonderful. I looked at the box art before hopping on the podcast, and it's very colorful in the image. It's kind of that classic first screen, but it's drawn of Harry swinging over at least one alligator in the water, or maybe it's a crocodile. I can't remember. But that makes sense. That it's just cool to hear someone gravitating towards a game because of the cover art. I feel like that's a thing of the times, of that time. And it was your choice, so you got some ownership over this game.
Yeah, I wanted to play, and the idea of being a treasure hunter, and I mean, I don't think I saw it. I don't remember seeing it anywhere else beforehand. So, but in terms of why it sticks with me and why I got so engaged, I think the sound design has had a lot to do with it. I just remember this makes me think of going to the Vegas casino, and the sounds can like lock you in, like especially that when I play my video game blackjack. So I'm still hooked on
it worked.
The game still has me hooked on. I go right to I don't play it at the proper table. I prefer the video game version of blackjack, which takes me right back to the Intellivison. But when you make money, that sound of going up, and that was the same sound that you would get when Pitfall Harry would grab a block of gold or that big diamond ring that would be just hanging out in the middle of the jungle. Just right there. You didn't have to dig it up or anything. It was just like hanging out there.
Waiting for you.
And he would grab it, and that was so satisfying that I think that's what kind of hooked me in. And like you said, just the challenge of trying to get further and make more money.
Yes, that is so great. It's funny how like little, I don't know, throughout my life, game related or not, certain sounds or smells will hit me and I'll be like transported back to that time of when I would experience it. I remember my like grandparents who lived in St. Louis, the St. Louis area rather, they had this like shag carpet that had such a specific smell. And anytime I smell anything like that, usually another shag carpet, which is rare these days, I am transported back. So that's so funny that like the sound design of that game and the casino are all sort of like elicit a similar response from you at least.
Yeah. And so, and when you lost the life, that, what was it? It was like, it sounded very, I can't quite remember. It was like, dong, ta dong, tong, or something like that. Wow. It was just very, you failure.
Yes, they really drove home the failure.
Right. And so you wanted to rebound and get back in there.
I love that. Were there other elements of the game that stuck out to you as well outside of maybe the sound design that you wanted to highlight today?
Well, floors opening up. I mean, you had these lakes that you would have to either swing over or they time it correctly so they would open up and then close. And when it closed, you could run across. But if it opened before you got all the way across, then you would drop down. And that was not good for you. But what you learned is like you could actually not run all the way across without leaping at the end. If you just tried the straight run, you wouldn't make it, but you could run. And then if you got the timing of when it was going to open up and you leaped just before it opened up, you could make it. Or you could swing over it on a vine. So just like timing was everything. Maybe this is where I learned the importance of timing that I now bring to my comedy. No, I don't know. But
there might be something to that. Well,
the other thing I would highlight is that there were places and moments in this game where you could get stuck.
Oh.
And you wouldn't die there, but you could not get out of there. You would just, I'm sure this is like a mistake in the game, but there's just like, you know, and your character is just looking around and waiting for you to do something, but there's no way out of this.
Yeah, just like a prison in this jungle or whatever.
Yeah, because you were, all the treasure, I think mostly, if I don't remember any treasure being underground, but there were these places where you could drop down underground, and you're like in these, I guess they were supposed to be tunnels or
perhaps
underground pits. Yes. Yay.
Yeah, there we go.
But there were places where you could climb out, but if there was no ladder, like you couldn't jump out of where you fell out. And so I remember finding a couple places where there was just no way out.
Yeah, I bet you had to, there was some memorization involved of, I should not go in there because that's a dead end.
Right, that's a dead end. Don't go in there.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, that's how I remember. Stay above ground, and leap before you're sucked into a opening lake.
Yes, that I'm sure there was so much practice that took place to even learn that timing of like when to leap when running across the lake, like just trial and error basically.
And there was this thing too. Now, I never made it. I'm only right now thinking about this. Because I guess Donkey Kong was a thing already, right?
It may have been out. I'll double check to be sure.
Yeah, why were there barrels rolling in the jungle? Because there were barrels that you had to leap over. In Pitfall, that you had to leap over. And it's just hitting me right now that makes no sense at all.
Donkey Kong did debut the year before.
So maybe just because in terms of the thing, the obstructions and the things, like that was the main one, because these barrels would just be rolling towards you.
Yes.
And you'd have to leap over them. And you'd have to maybe leap over them and time it so you could leap onto a vine to swing over, the crocodiles or whatever thing it is. Where were these barrels coming from?
I bet that was inspiration or borrowing from Donkey Kong of like, well, what else do you put as an obstacle? I don't know, a barrel.
Right. But at least then you know that there's an ape that's rolling them down.
Some unseen agitator.
Right. There was actually a motivation for why they're rolling, because they're coming down.
Oh, yes. In Donkey Kong.
In Donkey Kong, this was just a level ground and barrels came rolling towards you. I don't know. I didn't think about it at the time. That's a new revelation of a question mark. Who was rolling the barrels?
I wonder if that's ever been solved. We'll have to look into it later. That's good. Now, I want to dive into a bit more of the context of your life when you would have been playing this. I want to start with some scene painting of the room where this Intellivison was hooked up. Can you do that for me?
Sure. It's a basement. It is a basement. Yes, we're in Denver, Colorado. You come down the stairs and you turn to the right and flip the switch, which lights up the whole long basement. On the end, there's a couch that faces my grandmother's old dining table. It's one of those tables that has the flaps where you can flip them up to extend the table, or flip them down and have like a two-seater.
Sure.
So it's flipped up. There's a tablecloth on it, and on top is our old color television.
Oh.
we've replaced it now with a big screen kind of floor TV upstairs. So this tabletop color TV is the dedicated Intellivison TV, and so you can sit on the couch and look across at that table, and just go to town.
I love that.
It's kind of chilly down there.
I was gonna say, not just in Denver, but most basements can be chilly.
It's kind of chilly down there.
No windows out because it was fully underground.
I feel like there's a little bit of a, if I'm remembering correctly, a little segment of light that can come from a window, like
the right tiniest little window,
the little tiny window.
My grandparents' basement was like that.
What else is in there? There's a pool table down there too, so it's where you come to hang out, and at times a ping pong table as well.
Wow. So this the way you're talking about it? Is this home still in your family?
This is not. No.
Gotcha.
This is Colorado up until from 4th grade. I was there through maybe 10th grade.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. I was just kind of curious, but that's wonderful. Did you ever bring like snacks and stuff down there as well?
Sure.
What were some go-tos for you?
Most of our snacks were self put together. Peanut butter and crackers.
Ooh.
Would have been a frequent go-to, where you make the little sandwich of peanut butter in the middle and stick a Ritz on top and bottom, of course. What else? Just some plain potato chips. That's my dad. He didn't do flavors. I was like, can we at least get barbecue or something? All of these fancy sour cream? No, plain.
That's so funny.
And unless it was like a birthday or something, you got to pick out your chips specifically. Somehow he ruled the potato chip crown. I don't know. So
gosh,
plain
he
potato
had
chips.
the say over the kingdom.
The say, yeah. So plain chips, peanut butter and crackers, maybe a grilled cheese sandwich.
Oh, now we're talking.
Yeah,
That's
we had to put
stuff.
it together. Like we didn't have a lot of the little packaged cutesy snacks, fruit snacks. It's like something you got food, and now get creative and pull it together.
I love that. Sometimes I don't always ask guests about snacks. Maybe it's because I'm a little hungry now. I was just kind of curious to what you got into. That's wonderful. What else about the context of your life comes to mind at this time during your Pitfall Prime?
Pitfall Prime is just, that was a way that mostly me and my brother connected. We're extremely close now. I would say we've been generally close just all of our lives because our parents didn't really allow us to fight.
Sure, yes.
You ever heard you can't, what do you mean? You're not allowed to be mad at your brother. We would be forced to make up if there was ever any sort of beef going on. But we were interested in very different things. Mm-hmm. He is definitely 100% the sports guy. And like I mentioned, I early on got interested in, at that point, I didn't even know that I was going to be an actor. Mm-hmm. So that was before that. But I was just, the way I like to play, me and friends would be just all kind of make-believe fantasy.
Role playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he didn't get into any of that. And he would want me to, when his friends weren't around, come participate and play basketball or do things. And I'd be like,
Yeah.
So video games were the bridge. I would play the sports video games with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he would play Pitfall or whatever with me. And so it was kind of like the bridge to connecting.
Yeah. This is kind of a theme that comes up on occasion on this podcast, is like something that can bring siblings together, almost like a time of peace and tranquility among the kingdoms or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
I love hearing that. And was it just the two of you?
Yes, it was the two of us.
Gotcha.
He's 3 years older, but yeah,
I love
that's
that.
where we connected.
Is he still in Colorado?
No, nobody's in Colorado.
Gotcha.
In Colorado. We my mom's job moved us there from, like I said, I was in 4th grade, but they moved to Vegas. We went on to college, and nobody ever really settled back there.
Sure. Interesting. Do you remember what she did that like brought her to Colorado?
Oh, absolutely. She worked for the airlines.
Oh, no way. Which, like, multiple?
United Airlines.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So I used to fly you. I used to be a brand man, only fly United.
Yes.
I've branched out now that I pay for my own ticket.
Yeah. Right.
I look for that discount now, but I still, have a soft place in my heart for good old UAL.
Wow. That's cool. I just was kind of curious as to what she did. That I feel like that's always fun to fill in some of that context.
Yeah.
Do you, from this time with your brother, do you have any like broad or specific memories of playing with him, whether it be like you playing his or him playing yours, or even stuff that's not game related at all?
Just not too much. I mean, playing for hours. You could tell, like I mentioned, that he's still very much a gamer today. Like you could tell back then, I could play and I could let it go. He could not lose well. I remember that. I didn't beat him much, but there was this one golf game, and he's an avid golfer now. But this golf game, which I just figured out, like something clicked, and he could not beat me on this game.
That's trouble.
And I just remember him just losing it and demanding that I play again. And like I said, I'm good.
Yeah.
So I remember walking away, and that would be a sure way to just aggravate him, because he would want to get back in there and try to get a win, because each hole would have a par, and you figured out how to line it up and hit the thing, and I just got really good at figuring out the timing, because timing was everything. On when you had to click to, the guy with little swing back, and you had to click to hit and aim up your little pointer to send the ball in the correct direction. And, I was a savant. I had a
knack for it. I was just going to say, I would love to like put you in front of a golf game today and see if some of those skills translate.
See if they just translate. I would think they're much more advanced now.
They are.
I don't know.
Like I don't play a ton, but I have most of my experiences with the Mario Golf series, and I'm not. I have clubs. I golf a couple times a year. Not a big golfer. I love a golf video game. Like it's so relaxing and fun. I mean, it's usually challenging too, but there's something fun about the timing of like starting your swing and then the couple button presses you've got to do throughout. So that's my second goal today is I'll get you on the sticks, and I got to put you in front of Mario Golf.
Okay.
But that's also, I think, a theme of growing up of older siblings, especially competitive older siblings, having trouble taking a loss with humility. I'm like, truly thinking back to, I didn't have older siblings, but my best friend's older brother was exactly like that. In fact, it was kind of a risk to beat him at a game. You didn't know what wrath you would incur.
taking your life into your own hand.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
He won at most everything. You
Yes.
can give me golf. You can give me this.
Yeah, that's not so bad. This is some amazing context around the game. I know you would have been pretty young at the time. Do you remember, looking back in that era, things you were interested in or what you did outside of gaming, period?
Outside of gaming, movies. I definitely, like I said, I would go. Probably number one favorite thing to do would be to go to the Video City.
Yeah.
This is before there were the national brands that kind of just owned. So this was your local video store, Video City, and just walk the aisles. Like it would, my mom would drop me off there. At times, the Safeway grocery store is across the way. And so I would be across the street at the video store for the entirety of her shopping, doing grocery shopping. I was shopping, or not, I would only be allowed to get like 2 videos, but I'm like making a list for, these are the 2 for today, but then I have to see this later and that later and just kind of make the whole thing. So I was a movie buff.
I love that. This is probably before VHS, or was it during the time of VHS?
This is VHS. I feel like,
I can't remember if there was like a rental option before that or like a home video option.
I mean, there were, we had like this Laserdisc thing.
Yes.
That kind of came before, but I'm talking about the video era. I feel like it was about the same year that we got our first VHS and, the video stores started springing up, or within a couple years.
Cool.
I can't swear to which came first, my VHS or my Intellivison.
Yes.
I'm not quite sure, but it was about the same time.
Yeah. The last question about this is, do you remember having like a favorite movie as a kid, or like a couple that come to mind?
Couple that come to mind, the Goonies. What year was that? But that was
maybe 85.
Maybe 85.
Yeah. Also a favorite of mine.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like all these answers
85,
are gonna be sort of basic. E.T.
Yes.
And the things everybody loved. I don't remember like finding this little movie you guys probably wouldn't know about. I don't know. I think I used to have this is probably a couple years later, but I had like little clever movies anywhere where there was like some sort of magic happening, body switching.
Yes.
Which was a thing. Like, we bumped into each other and now mom's in dad's body. And I mean, I think this is a couple years later than this actual era we're talking about. Like, but, Fred Savage and switching bodies, and he's the dad. And I mean, all of those little fantasy kind of.
That's fun.
Family films were just my jam.
I love that. Now, as we sort of, reach at least what feels like near the end of this conversation, is there anything that you haven't brought up that's come to mind that you want to speak on, whether it's game related or context?
We've covered, probably most of what I think about when I think about that time.
Cool.
I think even my friends, we weren't, that much of gamers. I remember just like the dueling systems, because it was kind of turf wars between like Atari, because they were all out there and no one had the clear crown. I think Atari was a little bit penetrated the market a little bit more, but Intellivision's like, we're here and you got to take us seriously. And people were, people were jealous of us Intellivision owners. And then there was ColecoVision.
Yes.
This other little side guy who basically was doing the same thing. I mean, it seemed so similar to what Intellivison was doing that it was kind of like a little derivative. But I do remember sort of these friend groups that were sort of circling around who had what systems.
Yes, totally.
And so, you'd want to be able to share games and stuff, but you couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't really get any value out of a ColecoVision buddy. So you curated your friends with people who had the same system as you had.
I totally see that. That's so funny.
So, that's the only other thing I can kind of add that we haven't talked about. But
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, as we reach the end of this chat, can you do me a favor and just wrap up whatever place Pitfall held for you at the time?
Pitfall, at the time, it was unlocking fantasy within me, my inner adventurer. It unlocked some of the competitiveness in me because I really was driven to get to the end of the 20-minute period. Like I said, I don't think I ever made it, but it's the one time I remember being like, again, run it back. Really for that period, discovering my inner competitiveness and the drive that unlocked within me. And that's just it, and just I'll always have that.
Yes. Well, Marcus, thank you for bringing on Pitfall today to discuss. That was so much fun to hear, about your relationship with that game and all that filled out that sort of texture around it. Before we go, I've got a couple of post-show segments prepared for you based on you bringing on Pitfall today. The first of which is the Fact Me by Your Game segment, and that's where I'm just going to share a couple of fun facts with you about Pitfall. First of which, I wonder if you maybe, let me see, let's copy this link. I'm going to drop a link in our chat today. This is a little commercial that, if you don't mind pulling this up, there's a certain actor you might recognize. I have seen this commercial before, but it's Jack Black starring at the beginning of a Pitfall commercial for the Atari 2600. Not Intellivison, but let me know if you start playing that and see him just doing his thing with his little safari hat on.
Really? Okay. Let's see here. Okay.
I'll put a link in the show notes for the listeners to show. So this is less of a fact and more of a, hey, isn't this neat? Look at him.
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe I'll interlay part of that on the video version here as well so the listener can see.
I remember this commercial.
Oh, no way.
That is... I remember that. That was Jack Black. I remember that commercial.
Yes. Pretty wild. It was one of the first things that came up when I searched Pitfall Intellivison on YouTube. So I just love that. So that's, again, not a fun fact, more of a, hey, this is cool.
And just as I watch that, I still have the question of why they're rolling, but I think maybe those barrels were actually logs.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Still, who's rolling them, right?
Yes, good. Where are they just falling out of the sky?
Are they just falling out of the sky? But at least I was like, yes, that makes a little bit more sense. I think they're logs.
I'm glad that we kind of we did end up wrapping up the barrel mystery. That's so funny.
Right.
Oh, I love that. Lastly, my second fact, this just comes from Wikipedia with several citations. I have this titled Pitfall Harry's Launch to Stardom. Now, kind of like you had talked about before, Pitfall was a game that originated on a console, not in the arcade like many games had. Unlike Mario or Pac-Man, Pitfall Harry was the first popular video game character originating in home consoles. The character was featured on licensed merchandise and even appeared in the cartoon show Saturday Supercade, which aired from 1983 to 85 on CBS. I don't know if you've ever heard of this channel at all, or this show.
I don't remember. I mean, I do remember like anything that was popular back then, or the video games would get some sort of cartoon.
Yeah.
Like the Rubik's Cube had a cartoon. Like
No
it was
way.
a little character that came to life. Cubert, like all of these things had
Yes.
cartoons. So I'm not surprised by that. And
Yeah.
I think Supercade is one where like each week, if I'm remembering correctly, it was a couple of the different game characters where you would see an episode with Pitfall Harry,
Yes.
and then it'd be like the Rubik's Cube or Cubert or something later.
You are absolutely correct. It says here each episode is composed of several shorter segments featuring characters from this golden age of arcade video games, and then eventually Pitfall Harry as well. They have listed, you said Cubert. They got Pitfall Harry. They have Donkey Kong was featured with Mario and Pauline. Frogger.
Frog,
Kangaroo with friends from the Kangaroo arcade game. Space Ace. Anyway, it's a really fun little fact there that I just would have not expected this character to get his own cartoon, but like you said, it was a thing of the era.
Yes. If it was hot, it had to have a cartoon.
Yes. Gosh. Well, that'll do it for the Fact Me by Your Game segment. And now we'll move into the final one of the show, the game recommendations. Now, Marcus, this is my one forced tie-in to the movie Call Me By Your Name, where I am going to treat Pitfall as your passionate summer love that you have in Italy that unfortunately is not going to work out. You're going to break up. So in order to help you get over the heartbreak that you're definitely going to have, I'm going to try to introduce you to 3 potential new flings that all have a little in common with Pitfalls to help you get over. How does that sound?
That sounds good. I like to jump back on the a bike if I fall off.
There we
you
go.
will.
Absolutely.
Or a horse. Anything I fall off of, I want to jump
yes,
back on.
something to ride. The first of which is if you're like, hey, I love starting out in this platformer that defined the genre and helped set it out on its course. I want to play something more modern to see like where that has led to. I'll recommend a game called Spelunky. Now, Spelunky is also a like side-scrolling platformer where it actually has it owes a lot of its origin to Pitfall in the sense that you're also going deeper and deeper into worlds and caverns. And the fun thing about Spelunky is that it's from a genre called roguelikes, where essentially the game is procedurally generated. So they've got themes and all sorts of different like assets that they use, but one run will never look the same as another. So instead of memorizing this, you're just going to have to just fly by the seat of your pants. But Spelunky is your first one. Your second game recommendation, I've got 3 for you today, is if, you love this adventure genre, but you don't want the stress of platforming. You'd rather live in the story in the moment and maybe follow another very famous adventurer who's found himself in jungles before. I'll recommend the point-and-click adventure Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. This is a game that, I'm not sure if you know Annabelle Seymour, amazing improviser and writer from the community. Annabelle came on a very early episode of my podcast to discuss this. It's basically just like another Indiana Jones story, but it's like comedy focused and dialogue focused, and you're just sort of clicking through the adventure.
Okay.
A lot of puzzle solving too. But anyway, that's out there. And lastly, Marcus, is if you need the exact opposite of Pitfall. You're tired of falling in pits. You're tired of that. You want to soar through the skies. Then I'll recommend to you none other than the game Flappy Bird. Did you ever play Flappy Bird or know this craze?
No, I'd never heard of it.
This was a game that I believe started out as just a mobile app where I believe all you do is just press like just tap the screen to make your bird flap, and if you don't tap, it falls. So you're trying to just like fly to avoid enemies, but also fly higher and higher. It's kind of mostly a butt of a joke at this point, but that's your last recommendation. I'll go over all of them again. We've got Spelunky, Indiana Jones, and the Fate of Atlantis, and then Flappy Bird. Marcus, that'll do it for that segment, and that'll bring us to the end of the show. So before we go and plug whatever we'd like, including your Instagram again, so people can keep an eye out for your play, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. This was, for someone who I see on a weekly basis multiple times, it was so nice to just sit down and have a one-on-one with you today.
Oh, it was awesome. It was awesome to kind of go back to that time, which was, very formative and very fun, and relive some of those memories. So thank you.
Absolutely. On your way out today, do you want to plug your Instagram or anything else you want the listener to know about?
Yeah, please. I would love the listeners to follow me at Marcus Folmar, just my name. MarcusFolmar. And you'll be seeing all the exciting updates from my upcoming play, Chicken Stories, and anything else I might get into. Because, I like to keep my hands in a lot of different projects and stuff. So,
I love it.
Killer. You never know. You never know.
We'll see what's to come. It's going to be exciting. But thank you again. And I'll go ahead and just close us out with some plugs of my own. The cover art for Call Me By Your Game is done by Glenn J. You can find him and his other great work on Instagram at glenn.jay. As I said earlier, the show is all over social media, so you can give us a follow on any of these platforms. We are on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, even YouTube, like I was talking about. The show is produced, edited, and the original music is done by Jeremy Schmidt. You can find him and give him a thank you by checking out his podcast, Video Games, a Comedy Show. You can find me all over social media. There's links in the show notes. I'm also on Twitch, where by the time this comes out, I'm probably streaming through the original BioShock, which is a game we're covering over on our Patreon in our weekly Games Club series, which is, if you subscribe at the $5 DJ Toad tier, you get a new episode every single Friday of us going through a game in a book club format. We just wrapped up our Mass Effect series. We're playing BioShock now. And then if you're like, hey, I want to listen to this, but I don't exactly have $5 a month to support you guys with, that's okay. We have a free feed of our older Games Club series. It's also, there's a link in the show notes. If you search Super NPC Games Club, you're going to find that. We've done the Resident Evil series, the Metal Gear Solid series, and The Legend of Zelda. There's a bunch of great stuff there. But again, that stems from our Patreon, so check it out if you're interested. But that'll do it for this episode of Call Me By Your Game. We will see you on the next one.